Hey there, I'm Richard Groner, and I'm your instructor for Comm 101 Fundamentals of Public Speaking. Does this face look familiar? That's the face I see a lot of times when people realize, oh my God, I'm going to have to get up and give speeches. And I'll go into face to face classes and look at my students for Comm 101 and say, how many of you are here because you really like public speaking? And every once in a while, somebody will raise their hand. But most of the time, it's that deer in the headlights look. Oh my God, I've got to get up and give a speech. And so today I thought I would do what I call quick tips. And this is the first one for the class. This is about anxiety. And it's one of the biggest problems people have with public speaking. In fact, more people are afraid of public speaking than almost anything else. 42% of Americans said public speaking was the scariest thing they could think of in a survey that was done in 2016. So it's very common for people to not want to do any speaking in front of a crowd of people. And that's a lot of the reasons why people take it online rather than in a face to face class, because it might be easier to give a speech in front of a group of people you know or in front of a camera than it would be to sit in a classroom with 24 other strangers and get up in front of all of them and give a speech. And people have different reasons why they're anxious about it. Most of the time, it's, oh my God, there's eyeballs staring back at me, or I might make a mistake, or I'll say something stupid, or I'll look dumb. All kinds of things go into people's minds. And so they think, let's do this online. But even online students have a great fear of public speaking. They get up to give that first speech. And in this class, of course, you have to have a recording. So you have to have the camera on. And the minute they see that red or green or whatever color dot next to the camera come on, they panic and they freeze. And you see the nervousness build up inside them if it hasn't already yet. So today I thought we would talk a little bit about speech anxiety. First off, very common. Everybody just about hates public speaking. You'd be amazed at the people who have a fear of public speaking who go out and do it every day. People like, um, uh, I'm having a mind blank. I'm having a complete mind blank. Oprah Winfrey, for example, does not like giving speeches. She is not a fan of having people stare at her while she's giving a speech. And yet she's made a living on television in front of live audiences, doing shows and interviewing people and, all kinds of things. Ellen DeGeneres has a huge speech anxiety problem of getting up in front of a group of people. And she's had a talk show for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And before that, she was a stand up comedian, which is really scary because if anything's hard, getting up in front of a group of people and intentionally trying to make them laugh has got to be just a pressure cooker. And yet she's made her living as a comic and on TV doing a show. And that thing that everybody wants to do with Ellen, that dancing at the beginning, started as a version of her releasing nervous energy. She would be back behind the curtain waiting for him to start, and the guy would do the countdown, and she's dancing, and then he does 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and comes on, and then she would come out. That was the early part of the show. One day she missed the guy doing the countdown, and when the curtain opened, she was dancing. And she's very quick minded. So she worked it into, I'll just go up the side of the audience and come back down the other side and make it look like I intended to do it, but she was petrified the whole time. And it became kind of her shtick. But it was a complete accident. She was actually relieving stress. So we're going to talk today about ways to deal with speech anxiety and stress because it's a very common thing. And it's something that we want to work on overcoming. So you should now be able to see my screen. And stage fright or speech anxiety can be overcome, and it's really not that difficult. The first tip, I cannot stress this one enough. You want to prepare, prepare, prepare. Now, for this entire course, except I guess one speech where you have to talk about yourself, you get to pick the subjects you're talking about. So pick something you're interested in, something you know, something you're passionate about. That makes a huge difference when you get up to talk about it. It's something you feel confident about because you know something about it already. Then practice over and over and over. Rehearse that speech. Rehearse it in the shower. Rehearse it, when you're by yourself. Maybe go for a walk and rehearse it. Practice it over and over and over and make sure you really are saying what you want to say. You'd be surprised how many students will think, okay, I'm going to talk about cars and I know a lot about cars, so I'm not even going to worry about it. I'll just turn the camera on and talk for 3 minutes. And that shows so much when they actually do it. You can tell when somebody's practiced and when they haven't. There's a lot of well, yeah, and because they didn't prep ahead of time. They didn't think about what they wanted to say. They're trying to wing it, and it always makes for a poorer speech. So practice, 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 practice over and over and over. Don't think you can get up and wing it. The next one is think positively. That self-fulfilling prophecy of if I think I'm going to do terrible will cause you to do terrible. If you think you're going to do well, it will cause you to do better. So we do have a self-fulfilling prophecy within us. And if we think positively, you know what, I'm going to go out there. Yeah, I'm scared to death, but I'm going to go out there and do this. And I'm going to give it the best I can. I'm going to practice. I'm going to know my speech, and it's not going to be so bad. And you're now working it into your mind that you are going to do well on your speech, and it will perpetuate. It will self-perpetuate, and you will do better. So have a positive outlook. If you're having a negative outlook, walk away, work on that, come back and work on it as a positive. Envision yourself doing well in front of your audience. Envision the applause. That's one of the nice things about an audience, right? At the end, they all clap, and we like that. You also want to remember that most nervousness is not visible to somebody in the general audience. Usually I can tell, but I've been doing this for a while. But most people can't tell. I've had in face-to-face classes, this works really well. I'll have a student get up and I can tell right away that they're nervous. And they give their speech and they do a really good job. And when they get done, I'll say, now, were you really nervous? Yes, I was. And I'll ask the audience, did you perceive that they were really nervous? And they'll say, no, I didn't know that. And the speaker will say, seriously? Yeah, most of the time you think you're showing more nerves than you really are. And that will cause us to be higher speech anxiety. So remember, it's not always that obvious that you're nervous. It doesn't show up as strongly as you think it does. So remember that. Also, don't expect perfection. No one ever gives a perfect speech. Even some of the greatest speakers in the world have made mistakes in the middle of their speeches. They said the wrong word or they mispronounced something. They've left something out. That kind of stuff happens. Don't reach for perfection, reach for completion. Get what you want to say across, and hopefully you've done it well. And we'll talk about some things as the semester progresses about how you do that kind of thing. Another thing to remember is some anxiety is good. Being a little nervous gets our blood pressure up a little bit. It gets our heart pumping a little bit. We're more aware. And if you're paying more attention to yourself and your audience, you tend to do better because you've got that energy, the juices are flowing. So utilize that anxiety, turn it into a positive to help motivate you to do better. And another one is to acquire experience. Most people, when they're given the option of giving a speech or not giving a speech, will choose not to give the speech. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, once said that given the choice at a funeral between being the one in the casket and being the one giving the eulogy, most people will pick being in the casket. And that's true. I've asked tons of people that same kind of question. People would rather be dead than give a speech. So they always choose, don't give a speech. Don't do that. You get an opportunity to give a speech, give a speech. Take it. It might not be something you're really good at. It might not be something you're looking forward to, but it gives you that experience. And the more you do something, the better you become at doing it. So acquire the experience. You get asked to give a presentation. You get asked to speak in class. Do it. They ask for volunteers. In class, in the first speech, I always ask for volunteers, and it's dead silence. You can hear crickets chirp. Nobody wants to go first. Volunteer to go first. Get it over with. Give your speech, sit down. Imagine the fact that you now get to get done with it. You don't have to worry about it anymore like the other people who are still out there waiting to go, and they're getting more and more stressed out. Acquire that experience, speak as often as you can whenever you're given the opportunity. Ways to build your confidence: minimize what you memorize. This one shocks people. They don't realize, hey, I need to memorize the speech. No, you don't. When we talk about outlining, you'll understand that if you do outlining correctly, you know what you're going to say. You have a very small speaking outline that has the bare bones of your speech. And as long as you cover those main points, the stuff in the middle can change every single time. So you don't want to memorize your entire speech word for word. What typically happens when people do that, they get into the speech, they forget where they are, they forget what the next part is, and then they stumble and they almost completely get crushed because they can't remember what the next thing they wanted to say is, because they think it's got to be a speech. This is not a play. You are not doing, in a way, you're doing a performance, but not like a play is. You don't have memorized lines. You have points you want to cover, and you talk to those points. And a lot of really good speakers know what their points are. And every time they give that speech, even if it's the same speech, it's not always the same. It's a little different every time. Maybe they change the stories a little bit. Maybe they change the phrasing. Maybe they change some of the wording in it. But they know the main points they want to convey. And over time, you know your points. It doesn't really matter what the other stuff is. I've been lecturing for a long time now. I know what I want to cover material wise. And when I start even one of these, I don't really know what I'm going to say during the whole thing. I just sort of make it up as I go, as long as I cover my main points. Martin Luther King, one of the greatest speakers of all time. I Have a Dream is probably the epitome of public speaking. It's a beautiful speech. And you'll see it later on. That speech, for the most part, was ad-libbed. He knew the main points he wanted to get across. He had given that subject, that topic, in a speech many times. And so he covered the points that he wanted to convey. But a lot of the stuff in there, he's making up as he goes, because he's minimized what he memorized. He memorized the key points. And then how he got there is how he got here today. And then he might get there a different way tomorrow. But he's got the main points down. So that's one thing you definitely want to remember. Don't memorize your speech. Also, remember to breathe. For one thing, you got to breathe or you die. But breathing also brings down the heart rate. It brings down the blood pressure a little bit. It gives you a chance to think, okay, where am I? And a lot of times we'll stop and take a breath. And in our minds, it's like 5 minutes go by. And to the audience, it's just a small pause. And that's good. It gives you a chance to gather your thoughts a little bit. Maybe you start getting a little flustered, so you stop, you take a breath. It drops your heart rate, drops your blood pressure, gives your mind a chance to go, oh yeah, I want to talk about this next. And then you go on. Work that breath into your speech. Just because it's a speech does not mean you need to say as many words as possible. You need to get your points across. Put some spaces in there. Sometimes you want to put space in to emphasize a point. So you say something really important and then you pause. So remember to use breath. Another one is to practice out loud. I can't stress this one enough either. Don't just, you want to practice, prepare, right? Don't just do it silently in your head. Practice it out loud. As we'll find out when we get to delivery, vocalics are an important part of public speaking. Pitch, tone, volume, speed, all of that stuff matters. And a lot of times it changes the meaning of what we're saying. You can say things one way and have one meaning, and say it a completely different way and have another meaning, and the words are exactly the same. So practice how you say the words. Practice it out loud. Get used to hearing your voice say it. make sure that what you're saying non-verbally with your voice matches what your intention is. You also want to practice in front of people as much as possible. Now this is an online class, I know some of you are alone, but Zoom is your friend. FaceTime is your friend. Whatever software package you use to do interacting with other people through the computer, utilize that. Say, hey, to your friend, have you got 10 minutes? I got to practice a speech. Could we FaceTime and I run the speech by you? Now you're getting the experience of speaking to a face staring back at you, and you get some of those jitters out of the way. And the other nice thing is you can get feedback from them, and they're your friends. They're going to tell you stuff to help you do well. You get feedback from them, and then you can utilize that feedback in your speech before you actually do it for class. So you get used to things, and you get the experience and the help of feedback, and you can blend that into your speech and make it better before you even have to do it. And then the last thing, and this one, you'll see a speech later on that talks about this, practice in front of a camera. We all have one of these, right? Phones. Almost everybody's phone now has a camera in it. Utilize that thing. You're going to have to make a video of your speech for the class anyway. Practice it in front of the camera. For one thing, you get used to seeing that little, in my case, it's a green light, but sometimes it's a red light. But you're used to having the camera in front of you a little bit better. And you can go back and watch yourself, and people hate to do this. I don't like listening to myself. I don't like watching myself. You learn so much when you go back and watch yourself. I've had students, the likers, the ones that say like every third word, don't realize they're doing that. And they go back and watch themselves. Oh my God, I'm saying like all the time. Yeah, like, you like, are like, saying it like all the time. And that's a distraction. You want to cut those out. You don't realize all these little things until you watch yourself. Plus, you can hear yourself give the speech, and now you even for sure know the way you're saying the words is how you intend for the meaning to be. And that's very important. So watch yourself in front of a camera. Sometimes people roll their eyes. Like, you're going to see a speech later on, maybe this week, of a girl who did this. She filmed herself practicing for her first speech, and then she mashed sections of it together, and you see her get better. But she didn't realize she rolls her eyes, and she doesn't realize some of the other things that she does until she watches her speech. So practice in front of people, record yourself, watch that, see how you do, realize, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't want that up there. Or I like this, but I want to emphasize it with my hands a little bit better, use gestures. You get all of that knowledge from practicing in front of a camera. So hopefully those things help you in getting ready for that first speech for this week. It's a really simple speech. You do not need to have an audience for this one. Just record yourselves talking about a current event. But hopefully use these things in your speech and practice ahead of time getting your message across. And that will help you overcome speech anxiety and make this a little bit easier. I'll put some more quick tips up as the week progresses, and hopefully I'll see some of you in the live stream. And until then, I'll see you later.